Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Uncorked with Funny Wine Girl. This is Funny Wine Girl, aka Jenny Luby. And I know you're sick of hearing me say every week, I'm so excited about my guest this week. So I won't say it anymore, but it's still true. So this week, and I also like to say how I know people because I think it is so important that we connect with one another and that we're open because you never know who you could possibly help, who could help you, just the things that we can do together. I think it's so important that we continue to be open to learn from one another and to help one another. So this week, it's actually a relative of mine that I'm having on, Danielle Pensack. Her grandmother, Evelyn Isley, is my aunt. So Evelyn has passed on, but Evelyn is was one of my father's sisters. My dad had Joan, Marie, and Evelyn, his three sisters, and his brother Jim. So the only ones left are my dad and Jim. And unfortunately, his three sisters, my aunts, have passed on. But Aunt Evelyn was Danielle's grandmother. So that's how we're related. I guess you'd say second cousins. And Danielle is a curriculum coordinator in the Dunmore School District. She lives in, I guess, the Abingtons will say, I don't know if it's north or south. You can tell me which it is, one of those places up there. And I'm super excited to have her on to talk about something personal, but something that I think a lot of you will learn from and be able to relate to. So welcome, Danielle.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited for you to share your story. So first off, I know you, I always look at your pictures and just think she's a busy mom, right? So you work, you have four children, Sadie, Connor, Cole, Cooper. And I never forget Sadie's name because she's the only girl. And interesting, Sadie was born, of course, on Sadie Hawkins Day, right?
Yeah.
And she is your oldest.
She is.
And of course, all four children are wonderful and you have a wonderful husband, Jason. But today we're going to focus a little bit more on Connor, your son, Connor, who is your youngest because he's your miracle baby. You were not planning any more children and boom, out comes Connor. Well, of course, he didn't just come out. You had the 9 months gestation, I guess, or whatever you call it. I've never had children, the pod or however you produce children. It's not like Alien movie or anything, but and he was kind of a surprise, a miracle. So I want if you would share with us, Connor has some health issues, and that's led you to start the Connor Pensack Foundation. You just kicked it off. You're going to have a fundraiser in July, but let's start off with what was going on with Connor's health and when did you find out and what's that experience been like for you guys?
So I like to joke around to everyone and anyone that will listen and say, Connor's been giving us heart failure since conception. I had 3 C-sections, and with the last one, after we had Cooper, I had my tubes tied. And 9 months later, I found out I was pregnant with Connor. And that's just the ongoing joke because for the first 2 years of his life, everything seemed normal. He was doing really well. And then when he was 3, he was diagnosed with what's called very early onset inflammatory bowel disease. So there are 2 forms of it. You could have ulcerative colitis or Crohn's disease, and he falls under the ulcerative colitis umbrella of the disease. But everything was fine with him until it wasn't. And I will honestly never forget this. I was at a lake house with a bunch of my girlfriends that we were trying to do twice a year. And I had talked to Jason the night before, and he said everything was good with the kids. And he said, Connor had one diaper that was like a little weird, but he's fine. Don't worry about it. So I said, okay. So I came home the next day, and it just persisted that he was having very loose stools and there was blood and mucus in all of them. So at first I thought probably has a virus, not a big deal. Touched base with his pediatrician, Dr. Zero, who I absolutely love and would recommend to anyone and everyone, both as a physician and a person. His office just said, he probably has a little touch of something. Try the brat diet and then just wait and see how things progress. If anything gets worse or you feel uncomfortable, give us a call back. So long story short, over the course of the next week, he got progressively worse to the point that he was having upwards of 15 loose stools a day. They were all blood and mucus. He just started to kind of gray out a little bit. He didn't have a whole lot of energy. So I called Dr. Zero's office. They scheduled an immediate appointment, checked his hemoglobin in the office and some of his vitals, and they didn't like what they saw. So they sent us right over to Moses Taylor for some blood work. Dr. Zero gave me his cell phone number to give to the tech and said, make sure you call these in immediately. So they did. And he didn't like what came back. He said there was definitely some signs of some long-term damage there, but it was just a matter of trying to figure out what was causing it and how to stop it. So the next day he sent us for what was called a Meckel scan at CMC. And that is what we were actually hoping and praying that it was, because that would have been just some type of problem in the intestine that was one surgical repair fixed and we would be good. The Meckel scan came back negative. This was then, we were working our way into Memorial Day weekend. Now, this had been going on for almost 2 weeks, and I was getting nervous because I said to doctors, he said, we need to get a scope. He said, but we can't do it around here. He said, he spent hours, and so did his wife. She's a nurse that works with him. They spent hours calling all different children's hospitals to see who can take Connor the quickest to get him in for the scope. And I was getting nervous because I thought, it's a holiday weekend. I don't want to get this pushed off till next week because clearly he's deteriorating. So we got a call. It was Thursday morning at 7 a.m. I got a call from Dr. Zero's office, and he had said that he was able to get in touch with somebody down at Danville Children's Hospital to go down there. So we did, and they admitted us right through the ER. And we spent the next couple of days there just trying to figure out what was going on. Having a 3-year-old do a clean out for a colonoscopy and endoscopy is not something that I recommend. It did not go over well. And Connor will not touch apple juice now because of that, but a whole other cup of tea. So the doctors there were great. And they kept saying, we probably think it's just a polyp that's causing this. We'll get in there and see. So they did the scope. Dr. Zero was texting us back and forth just to see if any information had come back. And after they finished the scope, the doctor who performed it came in and he said, I'm really sorry. He said, I never in a million years would have thought that this is what I would have found when I went in there. And he handed us pictures from the scope, and it showed that Connor's intestines and his colon, everything were loaded with ulcers. And the one thing that they kept saying is they couldn't believe, both doctors, they couldn't believe that he never complained of pain because of what they saw. And they said there's no way that he couldn't have been in pain. And that's when I started to kind of feel guilty, because I was like, how did we not know? And they said there was no way you could have known. He probably, unfortunately, didn't know any better, because once he was old enough to associate all of that, it was just his normal, which is sad to think about. But they got us on a course of a treatment. They originally wanted us to give him pills. It was called sulfasalazine. He had a very hard time because he was 3 and he couldn't swallow the pills. We were actually, the day he was supposed to start them, we were leaving for the beach with our other side of the family that all goes in June. And we were an hour late for leaving because I couldn't get him to take the medicine. So we were able to get in touch with our local pharmacy. We used DePietro's, and they have been fantastic through all of this too. They were able to compound the medicine, and he started taking it. And that summer was smooth sailing for a while until it wasn't. But that was our entire introduction to what I like to call the roller coaster that I was not expecting to ever be on. So,
and how many years ago is that?
That was 2 years ago this past May.
2 years ago. So, and I know before you tell us a little bit more about where he's at now and where he had to go, and I know there's a lot more to the story. How are you feeling like with this? I mean, I know you said you felt bad and felt guilty, which I completely understand. You're thinking this poor little guy was in pain. What were you thinking? Like, what were you guys thinking at this point?
At first I was just trying to wrap my head around it, because to be quite honest, I had heard of Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, but I never heard of children getting it. And I didn't really know a lot of the information surrounding it. And I also didn't know how different it is for children than it is for adults. I also kept thinking to myself, in a way, and that we were lucky, because although it's a life-altering disease and a lot of things have changed and we've kind of been through a lot, it's not life-ending. And for that, I will forever be grateful, because there are people who have to have even harder conversations that we did. So I was kind of holding on to that too. Like I've always been kind of a glass half full person. So I just kept telling myself, like, okay, this is going to be hard for a little bit, but we'll figure it out. And it could always be worse.
Yeah. Which is a great way to approach it. Then at least you had hope, which was great.
Yes.
So everything was good for a while, you said, until it wasn't. And then what happened?
So we made it through the summer and into the fall, and Connor just started to become like a little, I want to say, irritated. Often his stomach was distended a lot. One of the things that I really appreciated about his doctor that we saw at Danville He said, I do treat patients with IBD. He said, I do it every single day. He said, but if I'm being completely honest, he said, most of my patients are teenagers. He said, I don't do a lot of VEO IBD. And it's actually a specialty that a lot of people don't have. There are pediatric GI doctors, but a lot of them don't specialize in VEO IBD. So Jason and I had talked, and Johnny's fiance, Katie, had a connection at CHOP, and she said, listen, they keep asking how he is. If you want a second opinion, you let us know, and we can get you in. And I just had like the mom gut, something doesn't seem right to me. I don't want to keep pushing this off. We were still kind of in the midst of COVID. So Connor was due for another scope, and they kept pushing it off, saying that all elected procedures were being put off. But Jason and I were kind of annoyed by that, not by the doctor, but by the hospital itself, because it wasn't an elective procedure. We needed to see what was going on in there. So I called Katie and I said, it can't hurt to get the second opinion. Something's telling me that we should just do it. And within a day, we had an appointment for the following week at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Also, you'll hear me say CHOP a million times. And we have been going there ever since. And it was the best decision that we ever made. And I'm so grateful that we were able to get there. The doctor that we work with is Dr. Judith Kelson, and she is world renowned for VEO IBD. She has a research study out of CHOP, and Connor is actually a part of her research study. And she is brilliant and great with him, and just runs a service where you could tell that she's spreading her knowledge while treating her patients, and everybody just feels comfortable. One of the biggest takeaways for me, when we were going to the original hospital, every time I had to take Connor, even just to an appointment, he would cry and tell me he didn't want to go. He's still, to this day, now we're 2 years into this, a year and a half into being treated at CHOP, will ask me, when are we going to the glow in the dark hospital? Because he likes it there, which is great for me because we spend a lot of time there, and it's not a traumatic day. It's an okay day when we have to go.
Yeah. So how often now, I mean, obviously there's follow-up and watching to see how it's progressing and everything. How often would you say he goes? I mean, I'm sure, I guess occasionally there could be flare-ups, and then you have to go then as well.
So we, this past year, we've been there a whole lot more than I ever thought we would be. Originally he was on oral medication, then stuff started to really deteriorate, and we just couldn't get him back from it. So last summer, it'll be a year ago in July, he started in a flare, and we haven't been able to find a deep remission for him since. That August, he ended up, it was the end of August, the beginning of September, he ended up with his first hospital stay. And that's where they switched his medicine from oral meds to infusions. So we would have to take him, after they completed the onboarding doses, we would have to take him once a month for the infusions. That medication stopped working in January. He ended up in another inpatient 5-day stay where they switched his medicine. And then we originally started going back once a month, and then the medicine wasn't taking. So then we were there every other week. And then in February, it's still like he was just, things were not going well. And in March, he ended up inpatient for 2 weeks. And it was there that we switched to the medicine that he's currently on. So we're back to an oral. So for the majority of this year, we were there at least once a month, if not more, usually more with follow-ups and different things like that. Right now, we're probably there maybe once every 5 weeks. We go back again the end of June. Through the last hospital stay, a lot of other things happened too. So we not only see his doctor there, but we also see a nutritionist who's trying to help. He has a really bad relationship with food right now because he associates eating with having stomach pain and having to go to the bathroom. So he's a very, very picky eater. He also, because he was on high dose steroids for so long, he's at risk for adrenal failure. So we see an endocrinologist down there, and he is also scheduled to see that they have a specific GI psychologist just to help him process everything that he's going through. He just finished preschool. He graduated last week. He's going to kindergarten, and he's really going to probably start to recognize that there's something a little bit different than with other kids. And he had to miss a lot of time at preschool this year because of everything, because of appointments and being sick, because he's immunocompromised. He literally picks up anything and everything. We've been struggling with him for the last month and a half. He's had 2 different viruses, and then his body can't bounce back from them. So then it creates a rash as like an immune response to everything that's going on. So he's really, really been struggling the past month and a half, which I feel bad because you hate to see it. And there's nothing that I could do to make it better for him, which is frustrating. But I joke and say that chops are home away from home. We spend a lot of time down there.
Now, I would imagine, obviously this has to impact him overall, like even his level, like wanting to play and do different things like that. Do you see that as well?
Absolutely. So Saturday, it was nice out here. He had a t-ball game in the morning. And then we got back and the other boys were running around playing outside, and he lasted maybe 20 minutes. And his iron is really low, and there's talk of him needing an iron infusion, but they're trying to balance that with making sure that his other levels are okay. But we can't get a clear read on blood work until the sinus infection and the ear infection and all the rashes clear up. So it's a constant balancing act. And I feel like more times than not throughout the day, he's really run down, and he sees his brothers playing or his sister playing and he wants to, but he also is really good about knowing his limits, which I appreciate.
Yeah. Does he understand? I mean, I obviously at his age, it has to be at his level. So only so much can be comprehended, I'm sure, but he understands that something's going on. That's
He
why.
absolutely,
Yeah.
he does. We were also fortunate. I always say, like, small town, there are connections through different people. We were extremely fortunate through our cousin Max, his fiance, one of her friends from college, his husband is in med school. One of his good friends who's in med school with him was diagnosed with the exact disease that Connor has at the age of 2. So through Emma and Quinn, they got us in touch with Adam, and he will Zoom with us or FaceTime Connor or check in via text message. And obviously he's in his 20s, so there's a big age gap. Personally and selfishly, I love when he does, because it reminds me, like, yes, we're going through something right now, but he will get to a point where he's stable. And his doctors tell us that all the time. He's not going to be a hospital kid forever. It's just really hard when they're young because their bodies are changing and they need to figure out the right therapies that are going to work for them. But just to see Adam excelling in med school and knowing that everything that he wanted to achieve, he is on the path to doing that while living with the disease is very reassuring. He also wrote a children's book and illustrated it. So Emma,
oh my gosh.
yes, Emma got that for Connor. So we read that sometimes too, because it's every single thing that he goes through. And Connor will relate and say he had a really hard time with IVs for the longest time because it's painful. And he would say, well, Adam's brave and he does it, so I can do it too. So being able to pair him up, even though there's an age gap, somebody who has been through it, I think has been very beneficial for him, because he'll ask to talk to him and talk about different things. So I appreciate them for making that connection for us, because I think it's a lifelong one.
Yeah, that's awesome that he has that to see. I mean, and now we're talking about, these issues that are, IBD, but whether it's this or some other illness, it's that idea of connecting and knowing I'm not alone. I have someone, look at what they're doing and they made it through. I think that's wonderful. And that's to my point that I say every week with the podcast. And as far as reminding people to connect, look at all these ways that you've connected, and it's helping Connor. So I think it's so important that we're open to these things and accepting help, asking for it and accepting help. Before we talk about the foundation, let me ask you, how does this impact? Obviously, I know it impacts you guys in a great deal, because everything, you don't want to see your child hurting and all this. How does it impact your relationship, like with the other kids and them seeing their little brother being sick?
So I have the hardest time, I think, with dealing with the mom guilt that comes with that, especially like those 2 weeks that we were in the hospital. Jason came down on the weekends and he was back and forth, but I was down there for the full 2 weeks with Connor. And I said, I must have said a million times, I wish I could cut myself in half. Sadie's 11 going on 25. She knows too much, and it's not, we don't try to shelter our kids from the things that are going on, but we also try to sugarcoat it in a way that I don't want them to have to carry the stress of it. But it doesn't matter how much we try to hide it from her or maybe water it down for her. She kind of reads between the lines and she gets it. So I get nervous for her because she is a tween and she's going to be going through all of those teenage girl feelings, and I don't want her to have the added stress. So we try, especially when we're home, for her and I to just do things together that don't include the boys. But she perseverates on things, and I could tell when something's bothering her. And I know every time that we have an appointment, we have to go to CHOP. I have a huge calendar in the kitchen because it's the only way I survive. And she'll see it on there. And a couple of days leading up to it, she'll be like, "Well, Mom, are you coming home that day?" And the second she gets out of school, she'll text me and be like, "Are you on your way home yet?" Because she gets nervous that every time we go, we're going to have to stay, which is hard. The other two, Cole's 9 and Cooper is going to be 7 next week. So they are funny. They know that something is wrong, and they worry about him sometimes when he seems off. They do miss us when we're not around, but I think because they have each other, it kind of helps balance the two of them out. And they don't have the understanding of it that Sadie does. They know that he has belly problems. They know that he sometimes is picky with his eating, and sometimes we have to go to Philly, but I don't think take it as hard as she does. So I have the most difficult time just making sure that she's okay on top of everything else, because I don't want her to carry the weight of that with everything else that an 11-year-old has going on in life.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, maybe I'm partial because I'm a woman, but I think women are more, our gender is much more sensitive and caring. So she is going to absorb a lot more,
Absolutely.
I think, than boys
And
do.
I say too, that's her buddy, because the other two have each other, and they're kind of at an age where she wants to do something and they're like, "No, we don't want to play with you." But Connor idolizes her. So two of my friends, when we were hospitalized, Sadie was having a really, really hard time, and they had worked it out with my mom. They came and picked Sadie up and they brought her down to us for the day and surprised us. So I think that was really good for both her and Connor, because the two of them were having a hard time. So that goes back to like those connections and just accepting help. I've been friends with them since grade school, but they were like, they didn't ask. They were like, "We're just doing this and you're going to deal with it." So I appreciate that, because I don't ever want to put people out, because I know everybody has something going on. But I appreciate the fact that they did that, because it helped the two of them tremendously.
Yeah. And I'm sure, and I know this because I know, your mom, I know Tammy and Marty, and it's so important. And I'm sure you are grateful for that. Not everyone has family, but you're fortunate that you do have your parents to help out. I mean, because otherwise I can't even imagine what parents do, or single moms.
Well, I say that all the time. And even like the hospital staff, they're like, you guys are so, I said, "You don't understand how fortunate we are." I said, because my parents are 10 minutes away, 15 minutes tops with traffic. I said, Jason's parents are like 25 minutes away. I said, and the four of them are so helpful and so willing. And they pick up the slack, even without having a sick child. Just when we have 4 kids, they have to be different places at the same time on the same day. So everybody kind of pitches in and helps. And I appreciate that so much, because I know a lot of people don't have that. And we don't take that for granted. And I also say to the kids, you can't take for granted the fact that you have 2 sets of grandparents, plus my mom's parents are still alive. I said, you are so fortunate to be surrounded with so much family, because a lot of people don't have that.
Yeah. Yeah. And all the cousins on top of that. I
Oh,
know I've
yeah.
been to the family gatherings. It's like those
Well, and
pictures are getting bigger and bigger.
They do. And there were times when I was having a really, really hard time. I always say Tracy's my sanity, because she, the one time I didn't know how things were going to work out, and Jason had a really big meeting, so he couldn't miss work. And she yelled at me and she was like, "No, I'm watching the kids. Your mother's going with you." And it's just that, like, I don't want to put people out, but she was not taking no for an answer. And if I'm driving by myself and Connor's sleeping, she's the one that I call to like unleash everything on and get it all out there and work through it. So I so grateful for everyone that we have, both friends and family, because it really, really makes a big difference.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And you need that, my gosh, to carry that yourself without having someone to talk to. That's a lot to deal with. So, so let's talk about, you created the Connor Pensack Foundation, and this is recent, I believe. I mean, I just started seeing posts about it on Facebook this year. So tell me a little bit about the purpose of the foundation. And I know you have a big fundraiser, your first one coming up next month in July, and we'll talk about that. But tell me a little bit about that. And you're also doing a blog. We'll talk a little bit about that too, because I think other moms will definitely, not just moms, dads, even maybe people in the medical profession would like to read what you're sharing.
So after that last hospital stay, we were there for 2 weeks. It just kind of like shifted things for me. And I said to Jason, I feel helpless. We're sitting here, we're watching this happen. Again, we are so fortunate to be treated at CHOP. His doctors are amazing. but there's only so much that they could do because research depends on funding, and funding is not always readily available. And again, we had talked about this, that IBD is not life ending, it's life altering. So a lot of times it's hard to get funding to go there too, because there are so many diseases that are out there that everybody needs something somewhere. So I said to Jason, first of all, I said, we knew nothing about this disease until we had to. And second, I said, there's not a lot of knowledge out there about it. So I said, are we crazy? Should we start something? And honestly, I could say anything to him, and he, even if he thinks I'm nuts, he'll be like, I'll do whatever you want me to. So he agreed that it would be a good idea. It was something that we could do. And just to raise money, we were able to, but the fundraiser, we were able to register it with CHOP. So all of the proceeds that we make from the fundraiser, which, like you said, we'll talk about, goes directly to Dr. Kelson's research, which is awesome because we participated. CHOP held a Hope Walk in August, or I'm sorry, not August, in April, down in Philly. And the proceeds to that, we raised money and had a team and walked, and it was a lot of fun. And John Kranick is hell bent on making it bigger next year because he said, we're competitive people. We don't have enough people here.
Oh, I could see this. Yeah, for sure. Okay. I think I want to be involved in this too.
Absolutely. So it was fun to be there. And that too was a good connection for Connor because they had all of the patients stand up. So he was able to see all these kids, small like him and big, like, you're not alone. Everybody's going through this. But all the money that was raised from that goes to the general GI department and fund at CHOP, which again is great because they do so much for their patients. But in us running this fundraiser, we're able to direct the funds to wherever we want within the hospital, as long as they have registered research. And Dr. Kelson does. So we are able to direct it to her, which Connor is a part of that research study. So I said in creating the foundation, one, it's just awareness. And two, just being able to give back to the woman who does so much for so many. And I don't know if she sleeps, but she always looks good and she's always has a smile on her face. And I just wanted to be able to do something. Originally, we had looked to see where the closest colitis and Crohn's Foundation branch is, because we were going to try to team up with them and do something, but the closest one is Philly. So I said to Jason, let's be crazy and do something here closer. So that's how the whole thing came to be. So we started to research. Jason is the king of research. And then there's another group in the area that has a foundation, the Judaic Foundation, and Theo and Greg have been more than forthcoming and saying anything that you need, reach out to us. They've been doing it for a really long time for a really great cause. So we appreciate that offer too. But we've just been kind of feeling our way through and reading up on stuff and researching. We're officially approved as a 501c3, and we got the ball rolling as soon as we got that paperwork.
That's great. So it's only this year, right, that it's really been
we started it in April.
Okay. And so the big fundraiser is coming up. Well, it's actually your first fundraiser, I think, right, in July. Yep. And it's going to be a golf tournament, but you're going to have basket raffles. So talk a little bit about that and let me share with the listeners how they can get involved. I mean, yes, we're podcasting this. I'm in Scranton and you're close by in South Abington Township, but people can donate from anywhere thanks to the power of the internet. So
yeah. So we're a big golf family on both sides of the family. Jason and I both golf. All four of our kids golf. My father lives at a golf course pretty much, which makes my mother happy. My father-in-law is a golfer. Jason's sister is a big golfer. And it's something that we do for fun. Jason's cousin is the GM at the Blue and White course at Penn State. So he's a big golfer. His uncle, who he passed away last March, but he was a huge golfer. His cousin Heather. It's just something that we always do. We love to do it. So I said to Jason, if we hold an annual golf tournament, I said, first of all, we as a family are always looking for golf tournaments to play in. Jason, myself, his dad, and his sister try to do at least 3 a year. I said, that's something that we could A, do as a family, but B, as Connor gets older, it's easily transferable to him. It's nothing that's crazy or hard to do. And it's something that he will have been a part of his whole life because he loves to golf too. So, that was our first thought. And then everybody in our family and friends and people I work with, everybody loves a good basket raffle. So, and we always say the raffles are the best part of the tournaments. So we will have basket raffles there and a 50-50. There'll be the regular prizes for golfers. But anybody, even if you're not a golfer, we're inviting to come before, like during registration, buy some tickets. We'll have cell phone numbers and names. So even if you're somebody who wins and you're not there at the end, we could get in touch with them. We're also in conjunction with all of this. I just got off the phone with the company today, but my mother-in-law's friends were like, oh, we don't golf, but we want a t-shirt. So I had talked to the company that's going to make the t-shirts for us for the tournament. And they said we can open an online store for a couple weeks, and then you could either do a pickup or they could choose shipping. So we're going to do that too, to try to raise some funds, like just tack a couple extra dollars onto the sale. And then just kind of go from there and hope that we get good money from it. We do have a direct link on our website, the Connor Pensack Foundation.com. There's a direct link for people who don't golf or that feel more comfortable donating that way. And that gives his story. It's linked to the CHOP website, and that gives his story on there. And then those donations go directly to CHOP. They don't have to wait for us to push anything through. So those are our ideas for right now. As time goes on, we'll probably add on more. I'm always coming up with crazy stuff.
So tell us the details. Is it July 15th or?
Yes. So it's
July
Saturday,
15th.
July 15th at Pine Hills Country Club in Scranton on Kaiser Ave. It's a 1:30 shotgun start for golfing, but registration starts at noon. So I would say anybody who wants to come between 12 and 1 could come and fill out the tickets. And if you want to stay and have lunch at their clubhouse or whatever, even a little bit past that, once the golfing starts and they're on the course, I would say probably even between 2:30 and 3:30, we would still keep it open because we won't pull the raffle until dinner anyway. But we'll be there all day hanging out.
Okay. And that's also, and then for, like I said, folks who aren't around that won't be here, you can definitely go online, and in the show notes, I will put a link directly to the foundation's website. I'd like to talk for a minute about, you mentioned before I hit the record button, we were talking a little bit about the blog that you started too. And you said you're completely open about this, which I think is so helpful. When people are transparent about their life experiences, it just makes it easier for other people who are going through things, so they don't feel alone, that they feel, they know they could talk to you maybe as a resource, but that they don't feel embarrassed and they can share things. Tell me a little bit about, I know you were sharing a nice story that already you've gotten some nice connection and response from people who are so happy that you're sharing and being honest and open with what's going on with you.
So for the first year when Connor was first diagnosed, our family knew, or close friends knew, but it wasn't something that we really put out there. It was never anything that we wanted Connor to be known for per se. I didn't want it to define him, just something that he dealt with. But then as we lived from August until currently, I realized that this is something that's bigger than anything that we could really deal with on our own. And that spreading awareness is a big deal, because we may get connected with people who could help us, or maybe we can help other people through our experiences. So I was a little apprehensive when we started the foundation to include a blog with it, but I also wanted to be able to explain the why and the how and everything else that was happening. So I realized I'm almost 40 and I have 4 kids and a good life, and I'm beyond caring what anybody thinks. So I'm putting myself out there, and maybe I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and that's okay. But it was a way for me to kind of really share what our story is, how it started from day one, and just include updates on Connor, just so you could see, like, he has his good days, he has his bad days, different things that we do as a family. One of the biggest blog posts that I generated the most activity on was the one where I talked about the time that I realized that I thought I was handling things and I thought I was okay. And I realized I wasn't. And I went to my doctor and kind of let it all out there. And she diagnosed me with trauma-induced anxiety. And that was a year ago, this past February. And she started me on the anti-anxiety medicine, and it has been life-changing in all the best ways. I am able to kind of calm and quiet my fears and nervousness, not all the time, but most of the time, and just appreciate life for what it is. So I say to Jason a lot, like, are we crazy for doing this? Am I crazy for sharing all this information? And one day, right after I had posted the blog post about anxiety, a woman who I don't know, she sent me a Facebook message and said, reaching out to you. I found you through the foundation page, and I just want you to know that I absolutely love your blog. I've gone through something similar but different. She said, but mine was years ago that something happened to one of my children, and I never dealt with it. And she said, in reading everything that you just said, I recognize that that is everything that I went through, and I felt like I was alone. And even though it's years later, I really appreciate that you shared that, because I recognize that I'm not. And I think that that's the thing, like, the internet is a great thing. But everybody only puts the happy side of their life out there. And I'm guilty of it too, because you want to share the happiness and you don't want to put anything crazy out there, but not every day is happy. Not everybody has a great week or a great month. Some people are happy if they have one good day a month. So I just wanted to put the other side of it out there too, and say, like, hey, sometimes things look great, but it's not always the case. And I'm a firm believer that you just take what you're given in life and you make the best of it. Nana always said everything happens for a reason, and we may never know in this lifetime what that reason is. But I just wanted people to see that even though, like, there are times where I feel down and out, and the fact that I'm even talking about this today and not crying is a miracle, because that doesn't always happen. Feelings ebb and flow, and it's okay. And I wanted to be vulnerable and put myself out there to say, like, hey, everybody's going through something. Give people grace, because you don't know what they're dealing with behind the smile that's on their face.
Yeah, I agree 100% that, I mean, and you're right. A lot of times we think it's just the sunny side, which, let's face it, we all kind of know. We're like, yeah, I know them. It's not really like that. No, in some instances,
Yeah.
not you guys, but my mom, it's funny. My mom will say to me, like, when I'm talking about my perimenopause, or I don't know, whatever kind of personal information I'm sharing, she's like, why do you tell people that? I'm like, why not? Because I'm a big, like you said, being open about stuff. Like, I'm 51. I turned 51 last September, so I'm getting closer to 52. But I hate to see when people don't want to talk about their age as women, because it's like, then we're not valid anymore. And that, I hate that. So for me, I'm a big believer in, like, promoting women and promoting, as you get older, we just get better, like wine, which I happen to love. But I mean, I think it's so important that we share this stuff. And I know that you're doing a great service to people, obviously already, with this woman talking to, because, and she's one, but imagine all the ones you're impacting that you don't even know about, who just don't reach out. But I'm sure there are many. And I think that's going to continue as you continue more with the foundation. I think it's going to be great.
Thank you. I hope so. I mean, if Jason said after I got that message, he said, if nothing else comes from this, just making that connection with one person is huge. But I just think that there's so much good that could come from a really crappy situation, literally and figuratively. And I wanted our kids to see that just because you feel like you're down and out, or you feel like you were handed something that is so much bigger than you, give yourself a day or a week or whatever you need to wallow in self-pity, but then stand up and get back at it and make the best of the situation. Because we, as a family, are very fortunate because we're supported, but Connor knows that we're here to do whatever he needs, but we're also not just gonna feel sorry for ourselves and lay around and be upset about it, because life is way too short and a lot of good things could come from it. So that was kind of the premise behind everything.
Yeah, 100% agreed. Absolutely. So before we wrap up, I know you had said, besides the golf tournament, are there anything that you'd want to share? I mean, obviously people can go to the website and check out your blog, which is really valuable. Definitely donate if you can. Come on out July, take some, oh my God, everyone, like you said, loves a good basket raffle. Those are awesome.
Good ones coming in already. So.
I know, you were telling me, I mean, who doesn't love lottery tickets and all kinds of great stuff? A basket of cheer, I believe I heard.
Yes. We actually, my mom, my sister-in-law, my mother-in-law, Jason's aunt and cousin, we went to the wineries over Mother's Day weekend, and we were just at a wine tasting in Wackett's Glen, and this woman who owned the place overheard us talking, and she donated 3 bottles of wine to make a basket with it, with her pamphlet. So there are really good people out there.
That is so nice to hear. And believe me, I get upset when I'm out driving and I see people doing all kinds of crazy nonsense and, like, rude, ignorant. And I've gotten into a habit now where I'll start cursing or doing whatever I do. Then I literally talk to myself and go, Janine, You're not going down this rabbit hole because of the reason you just said, because I've come across those people too. You know,
Yes,
there are all the crappy ones out there, but then there are so
absolutely.
many nice people. And the fact that she simply heard you talking about it and donated, that's great.
Yeah, she was so sweet. And the wine is really cute. It's one of their signature ones, but it has a little chocolate lab on the front. So
Okay, those are going
person,
to
you
be
could look
hot.
at a cute dog while drinking some wine.
Okay, I'm definitely going to put some
Yeah,
tickets in that one. Anything with wine, I'll take.
right.
So is there anything else as far as what you have in mind? I know you said who knows what's going to happen. I mean, you'll probably have a ton of different great ideas, but after the fundraiser, is there anything that you can share at this point that we can look forward to?
Yes. So if you follow along on we have a Facebook page, Connor Pensack Foundation. We also have an Instagram page, and I try to at least post on those once a week. Just with different stuff. But if you follow along on that, if we come up with some bright idea, you might see it there. One of my friends, her cousin I work with, and then her cousin's brother, so her other cousin, he owns a bar. So we were talking about possibly doing a happy hour maybe in August, because they said like the summer's slow with people being away and on vacation and stuff. So there's a potential that could be there. Around Christmas last year, we did a virtual toy drive through CHOP. After COVID, they stopped taking physical donations, but we do plan on doing that again. And then John Kranick is determined to have a big team next year, so next spring for our Hope Walk. So all that stuff will start up in January. The walk is in April, but the fundraising and everything for that's like January, February-ish. So just lots of different stuff.
That's awesome. So the best thing to do, everybody, just check out Instagram, Facebook, and the website. And like I said, I will put the link in the show notes so that you can check that out. That's absolutely awesome. Well, I want to thank you so much. Is there anything else that you wanted to even just say, not even just about the foundation, but about yourself, your kids, anything that you wanted to share in closing?
No, I am so proud of my kids for being so resilient in the face of all of this craziness. I am so blessed with the most supportive husband ever. And I know some people don't like the cheesy cheer, but Jason is literally, ask Tracy, she will tell you, she says all the time, how are you with her? And because he is just the most kind, caring, laid back person on the planet. He gets it from his father. His dad's the same way, but I am so appreciative of our family and our friends. The amount of people when we started this, coworkers and friends and family members of friends that are like, what can I do? How can we help? It's amazing. And it kind of reaffirms your feelings about society, not the bad drivers, but it's nice to know that we're surrounded by such great people. And I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come on and talk about this. And just everybody give us grace because we are stumbling through this and learning as we go. But I really think that a lot of good can come from this for years to come. So we're going to keep learning and keep doing whatever we can to support Dr. Kelson's research and Children's Hospital, because the things that they do there, they think of everything. They're amazing.
That's great. That's great. Well, and yes, have hope. I mean, I say it tongue in cheek when I get upset, but I think it's only because at heart I am a hopeful person and I do want to believe in good. So when we see the bad, it's like, but there are still great people out there and there is hope. And I love the fact that the lessons that you're teaching your kids too. It's like, okay, let's wallow for a little bit, but then we're going to march on and we're going to get through this together, which I think is great. And all the great people that you're meeting along the way and impacting with what you're doing. I know that it's appreciated. So thank you so much for sharing this, Danielle. It's great. And I look forward to being at the clubhouse, taking my basket raffle tickets, and maybe I might bring my mother. Maybe we'll have lunch and a glass of wine if that's possible.
There you go. Sounds good to me.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I will tell you, years ago, I have clubs that are just your basic, I don't know what the hell they were, $100 at Dick's. I just went in, bought them. I love going to the driving range. That's fun. Cause if I see if I can get it sale and I'm like, woo, but playing a game, I haven't played, I think it's been a good 7-8 years. My last game was so bad, I stopped keeping score. I'm like, that's it. I'm done.
That's why I play in all the captain and crews, because if my shot's bad, it doesn't make a difference. I golf for the beer and the golf cart ride.
That part was always fun from what I remember. Years ago, my one friend was going through a bad breakup and now, then she had more time on her hands. So we were golfing more and it was fun. That part was fun, but I was never very good, but it's still fun. It's still cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, you don't know, and not everybody has to be good at it. It's all right.
No. Comedic relief if you come with me, but
That's good. All right. Well, thank you so much, Danielle. Like I said to everybody, check out the show notes for all the details. And hopefully, if you can't make the event in July, you can check out the blog, the foundation, make a donation if you can. If not, just learn a little bit and share about the foundation. So, as I always say, I am grateful for your listening. And if you can help support the podcast, check out the show notes where I have my Buy Me a Coffee link. And if you can't monetarily, that's no worries at all. You can also help support this podcast by sharing it, sharing my social media posts, or just telling someone if you're in line, whether you're at the gas station, you're at the coffee place, or you're wherever you're at and you're talking to someone who wants a new podcast, just tell them about this. I appreciate that so much. It's us little guys who need your help the most. Joe Rogan and the rest of those big guys are fine. So share our posts. We need it. As I always say, I thank you so much. I appreciate you from the bottom of my heart and the bottom of my wine glass.